the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Katherine Nichols. Katherine, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
I am a writer of suspenseful women's fiction. I came to writing early in life and then picked it back up as a second or maybe third act in my life. And I have 2 books published out now, The Sometimes Sister and The Unreliables, and a third one coming out in December.
Well, that's awfully exciting. How did you get started writing?
Well, like I said, I wrote when I was a child and called my friends and bored them with my stories over the phone. And I kept writing, but I also became a high school English teacher, which I loved, taught English for a very long time, kept up with some writing, taught some creative writing classes, which was fun and kind of kept me thinking I'm going to do this. I didn't really get down serious about it in novel form until I retired. And so it truly was a third act for me. I'd been a copywriter at a radio and television station when I first started, then teaching, and now a novelist. So it was especially exciting to finally get to what I really had dreamed about doing all along.
I want to start with your background. So you were a copywriter and editor when you began, and then you started teaching high school English. Now,
yes, right.
As a literature professor, I understand that there's a total different way of approaching literature when you're teaching it versus when you're writing it. So you have this background with writing and editing, and then you moved to literature. Was there an easy transition to writing your novels?
Actually, yes. And that surprised me too. But I had spent so much time trying to get young people to enjoy writing. And unfortunately, and it's no one's fault, but the curriculum sometimes in high school beats the love of writing and literature out of children. So as I became more confident in teaching, I kind of went a little bit against the grain sometimes and made for more creative assignments. So I kept that feeling alive in myself, I think, that way. And I had all these stories in my head that had been percolating for I don't know how long. And it was like, oh my gosh, they were just kind of fighting against each other to get out. So it wasn't easy. I don't mean to say that it was easy, because writing is really not easy at all. Teaching high school teenagers is easier than writing. So there's that. But they were in my head, and it was just kind of freeing to let them out.
They do take on their own lives, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your experience with publishing.
Well, first of all, I joined a writer's critique group, which I think anyone who is trying to write needs to be brave enough to do that. And I say brave enough because I hated reading my stuff out loud. I could stand up in front of high school kids, adults, teachers. I did teacher training. As long as it wasn't my material, no nerves. But even just sitting around a small table with other authors, it was very intimidating to me. But I say do it, because it's the best thing. I don't think I ever would have gotten published or had the confidence or courage to even try without the support of a writing group. So I went through the writing group. I learned about query letters. I joined the Atlanta Writers Club, which is a wonderful organization. It's very supportive and offers all sorts of resources. I learned how to do a query letter, and I started querying. I had queried earlier 2 other books that I had written, but The Sometimes Sister was kind of like a love project. So I got serious and concentrated on that. I got an agent, and I thought, well, I've got it made now. This is great. And she was a nice person. She was good, but 2 years later, she hadn't sold anything. She wasn't as enthused about my second book, and I was enthused about it. And so we broke up. It was an amicable separation, and I just started querying again. Then Writer's Digest is an excellent source, and I started reading about smaller publishing houses. And my publisher is a smaller publisher. You didn't need an agent. So I submitted the manuscript and they accepted it. And I was like over the moon. And it has been a very good experience. I won't say I had made it, but I got published, and that was very exciting. When they accepted my second book, I had that impostor syndrome. I thought, well, I'm going to sign this contract really fast before they realized they sent it to the wrong person. And then that was a great experience. And when they accepted the third one, I felt like I was really an author. Unfortunately, both of my 1 and 2 books came out during the pandemic. So when you go with a smaller publisher, and now when you go with a bigger publisher as well, they don't do as much promoting for you. So I was kind of at a loss as to how to promote my book, and still kind of am at a loss as how to promote it. But that part is becoming less frightening and more familiar.
Well, what was scary in the beginning about marketing?
It wasn't so much scary as it was about being clueless, and I don't know about other authors, but it's hard. I'm getting better at it, but it was very hard for me to say things like, you really should buy my book. You'll like it. It's really good. It felt like bragging on your child in a unseemly manner. But I think I'm getting better about that. I watch other people. I think writers are excellent observers of their fellow mankind. So I concentrated on how some of my friends who are also authors and how they promoted themselves. And they were able to do it in a gentle way without coming across like, I'm the best ever. You've got to buy this because you'll be so sorry if you don't. And it just kind of gave me a feeling of how to talk about myself. Now, I'm still a little unsure how to go to people and say, would you like to have an event for me? But I'm getting better at that too. And with Atlanta Writers Club, we started looking at breweries. I have trouble with that word, but they are really open to letting you come and have a table. They've got absolutely nothing to lose because you're going to probably buy beer and your friends might come and buy beer or food. And so I'm becoming more creative, and that's making me feel more confident.
What a brilliant idea to go to a brewery. They usually have big spaces, long tables, and you're right. They want people to come in the door.
Yeah. And other things too. There are other places like that, but the brewery is just fun and no risk. If you don't sell a book, you're still going to have some fun.
That is very true. Where would we be in life if we didn't have a little bit of fun?
Exactly.
So tell me about your books in general. So I know a little bit because you and I had a conversation before. They sound super intriguing. And I'm going to start with this. Is you told me that people categorize your book as women's fiction, but women's fiction is really people's fiction. I would love a dialogue about that.
It's very frustrating. And I've come to understand that it's about placement on the shelf. It's not a judgment like I take it personally because I think women have so much to say and men like to listen to us and men read my books. The critique group read them. My son-in-law, who's not even that much of a reader, is reading my book. He probably wouldn't if he weren't married to my daughter, but that's okay. And I always felt that was limiting. So that's why I classify them when I talk about them as suspenseful women's fiction, because they do well in book clubs, but they're also just a good read. And because my main character is always a woman, my narrator is always a woman, I'm not bold enough to try the writing from a man's point of view. I love it when people do that, but I don't think I can do it. But my characters speak to women, but they're also funny and kind of unawares sexy. And occasionally my husband will come across a passage in the book and he'll be like, oh, I like this. And I'm like, looking at the same literary value here. But it is hard when you have to come up with a classification and a genre. And a lot of people fight that. They'll say, well, I don't want to limit myself. That's not what it's about. If you just do a cold, hard look at it, like, where are they going to put it when you're on the bookshelf? Then you get it, and it's not so personal.
And that's really wise information. We do tend to have our own opinions about what we write and where it should be, what it should be about, and even the title and the blurb and whatnot. But publishers have different opinions, and they're more versed at how to sell things than we usually are.
Exactly. And I think I've been done very well with listening to people who know more about certain things than I do. And that is one of the things that I would really advise new authors to not get your back up. When someone says something that you don't agree with, take a step back. They could be wrong. I mean, you know better about your book than they do, but they probably have a point. And a lot of times that point will help you look at it in a way that will help you get it published. I kind of listen sometimes. I have to keep quiet because I'll hear authors saying, well, they want me to do this, but, I'm not going to do that. And I'm thinking, well, what do you want? Do you want your personal integrity or you want to get your book published? And I want to get my book published. So if they tell me you need to change this, as long as they're not changing the essence of my book, which they're not, then I'm going to listen. So I say, put your pride aside. It isn't really your child. So you can listen to some advice about it. You can reject it if you don't like it, but don't act like you don't need it, because we need it.
Well, we spend a lot of time birthing our books, but once they're in the world, they're not really ours anymore.
I had a really fun experience. I taught the son of one of my good friends, who was also a teacher, and he's a brilliant writer. He doesn't write. He's like a astro engineer or something, but he reads my books and he's so sweet. And he and his mom were talking about symbolism in the Sometimes Sister. And it was so fun because I thought, well, what were you talking about? Because I'm not sure what the symbolism was, which is always what kids ask you when you're teaching. They're like, do you think that author really meant to put that in there? And I come up with some lofty response like, I think we have this shared subconscious, and I think that happens. And now I think, well, maybe it does. Maybe I was touching into something that we both felt and didn't know it.
I'll tell you, one of my impactful English teachers, my junior year, The Natural came out as a movie. And I didn't read the book. This is before I was a firm believer that you had to read the book. Now I will only read the book first before I see a movie. But she was so excited. She saw it opening day and she came back in on Monday and she was animated and explaining everything. And she was talking about how the sunlight was beaming off of the main character's hat. And it was so symbolic. And she literally jumped up on her desk and she was like surfing on top of the desk. She was so excited. It definitely made an impact on me. But I love the idea of a shared consciousness because I think you're right. I think we as writers, we don't necessarily know where some of those words come from. And we'll put in an alliteration. I'll go back and read some of my stuff and I'll be like, wait, I wrote that. Pretty good. I'll be like impressed with myself. And then you're like, well, okay, humble, please. But nonetheless, I'm going to use the shared subconscious, and I'm going to weave that into all my stuff from now on.
Right.
Katherine Nichols, how can people get in touch with you?
My website is it's Kathy Nichols. You type in Katherine Nichols, you're going to find my book, The Sometimes Sister, with all sorts of guidance to links. And I'm also on Facebook. If you send me a request, I love to have new friends. And I have a Wild Women Who Write website as well. If you type in Wild Women Who Write, you'll come across it. It's with my critique group, and we have all sorts of shared links in there as well. And you can find my books on Amazon, Katherine Nichols. Be careful, there are two Katherine Nichols, but The Sometimes Sister and The Unreliables.
All right, Kathy, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Oh, yes, sounds fun. I'll pretend you're Stephen Colbert.
There you go. What is your favorite color?
Ooh, I find blues and teals, that family. Yeah, the blue and teal family.
What has been the most exciting invitation you've received lately?
Ooh, the most exciting invitation. Oh, to my daughter's gender reveal party. She's having a baby in June, and they had a little party where they hit a golf ball and it puffed out the color of the smoke. I mean, the smoke puffed out the color of the gender. So it came out with blue smoke. So that was very exciting.
Oh, and it's your favorite color. That works out well.
Yes, I'm like, we're set here. I've got this kid.
All right. And my final question. What was the last daring thing other than publishing your books that you have done lately?
You know, it doesn't sound very daring, but I'm becoming much better at when someone says something that it isn't offensive necessarily, but it's insensitive. I'm getting much better at saying, I don't want to talk about that. I'm talking about something else. And I've found a way that still makes people mad, I think, but it's hard to argue with because I'm not judging it. And I'm getting so much better at daring to say that to just about anybody now. So I'm happy with that daring behavior.
Well, good for you. Katherine Nichols, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. We're all done. Kathy Nichols is a suspenseful women's fiction author with 2 books, The Sometimes Sister and The Unreliables. For more information about Kathy, visit her website at kathy-nichols.com. For more information about the upcoming Florida Writers Con in October 2022, visit floridawriters.org. Until next time.